Are we ready, committee, to begin? Okay. Good morning. Welcome to this Babergh Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I am Councillor Mary McLaren and I am chairing the meeting today. May I first remind you of some domestic arrangements. If you're attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones and laptops are on silent. Additionally, we will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you're intending to do so, please inform the committee clerk. If you hear the fire alarm, leave the building immediately via a fire exit and make your way to the assembly point, which is in Ipswich Town Football Ground. Follow the signs directing you to the fire exit at each end of the floor. Do not enter the atrium, which is the ground floor area and walkways. If you are in the atrium at the time of the alarm, follow the signs to the nearest fire exit. Use the stairs, not the lifts. Do not re-enter the building until told it is safe to do so. We have the following people in attendance this morning. We have Councillor Dave Busby, who is leader of the Council. Our officers are Mark Ems, Director for Operations and Climate Change, Matt Smith, Parking Services Manager, Jack Burton, Finance Business Partner, Catherine Davis, Sustainable Travel Officer. Also supporting us is Jan Robinson, Interim Monitoring Officer and Head of Governance, and Alicia Norman, Lead Officer for Overview and Scrutiny. So welcome to everybody to our meeting. Can I move to the agenda, please? Apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Brian Riley and Councillor Margaret Maybury substituting this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary, other registrable or non-registrable interests by members. Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Chairman. Two things that I would like to say. First of all, that I may be predisposed, but I'm open to the scrutinisation of this process today. The second is that I am independent chair. I do not have a voting right on the Lavenham Traffic Working Party. Get it right, Traffic Working Party.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask the monitoring officer?
That's fine.
That's fine. So that's fine, Councillor Maybury.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Item 3, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
Item 4, questions by the public.
None received.
Item 5, questions by councillors.
None received, Chair. Thank you.
So we'll come to the main item on the agenda, which is item 6. BOS 23/10, proposed car parking charges and road traffic orders. Firstly, I would like to invite the Interim Monitoring Officer to address the committee. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make it clear to members of the committee and any members of the public who are watching this meeting that we are here today. It's not for the committee to approve those recommendations in the report. That is the function for our Cabinet. However, the committee is here today to scrutinise and review the recommendations and the report to ensure that the principles of good decision making have been upheld. So members will be considering the following: Have all options been considered? Has regard been taken to due consultation that has been carried out? Has due regard been paid to the professional advice from officers? Is there a clarity of aims and purpose? Is the action proposed proportionate to the desired outcome? Does the recommendation have respect and regard for human rights and equalities? Is there a presumption of openness? Only relevant matters have been considered, and is the matter legal and in line with statutory requirements? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you. I'm going to invite Councillor Dave Busby to introduce... Sorry, I'm going to invite Councillor Dave Busby to introduce the report, and he's got 2 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I just want to set the scene, really, the background. The reason for this paper is that Babergh are facing a £6.7 million shortfall in its finances over the next 3 to 4 years. Whether you argue that the figure is 6.7, 6.8 or 6.5, it's a considerable figure. Currently, car parking is costing us approximately £400,000 a year, which could rise to £500,000 or £600,000. Again, it doesn't matter whether the figure is 4, 5, 6, 3 or 2. We cannot afford to fund any car parking costs if we are going to resolve our financial deficit. 6.7 million is going to be a real stretch to do it. If we can continue to do the same thing that we've been doing in terms of funding car parking, that's about £2 million of that 6 million. We cannot afford to do it. We can't afford to fund £1 towards car parking, never mind 2 million. The alternatives are we raise income through car parking charges to cover our costs, we outsource, we hand the car parks over or some arrangements for the towns to run their car parks, or thirdly, we sell or lease to a third party. Now, the third party, let's say it's NCP, guaranteed that they will want to introduce car parking charges, and they will be significantly higher than we're proposing as our solution. Now, if you refuse to accept that Babergh can't afford to spend anything on car parking, we will go into bankruptcy and we will declare Section 114 and the government will take over our finances. And the likely result of that is that they will introduce or they will sell the car parks off to help the finances. So you will end up with option 3, which is NCP
Councillor
charging.
Busby, we're grateful for your introduction, but I did say 2 minutes.
Fine.
Thank you.
So all I can just finish, it's a financial issue. Don't forget it. There is no option to carry on the way we are. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to invite Mark Ems, Director of Operations and Climate Change, to introduce the report to the committee. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Well, yes, on the 9th of January, Cabinet asked officers to carry out engagement and make recommendations on varying car parking charges. This was after they had rejected options to transfer parking to a private operator or to not vary the charges. The engagement closed Sunday 3rd of March. The feedback has been considered in our proposal and the results report compiled by the Strategic Policy Team has been included with the report. The full current net cost of delivering the service has been calculated as $667,000 for 24-25, rising to $792,000 by 26-27. As we advised and anticipated, this is higher than the $425,000 published budget book figures which we have been shared. 2 tariff options, A and B, have been put forward, which remain modest and favourable compared to the benchmarks local authorities within a 30-mile drive. Both options reduce the cost of all-day parking from the current £3 per day charge to, for option A, £2.50 and option B, £2.70. And this is intended to support residents needing to park for work and longer stay visitors. The long stay tariff structures proposed are deliberately lower than the short stay ones to encourage parking in the long stay areas to be used first. This will improve availability of spaces in short stay car parking and reduce any associated queuing and circling at times. Free period options have been ruled out as they will not sufficiently meet full cost recovery and still allow us to invest in meeting our parking strategy and sustainable travel aspirations. 98% of the transactions are currently sub 3 hours. We're proposing some changes to restrictions, including Monday to Saturday times of operation being 0800 to 1800, and 2 designations, Great Eastern Road, Sudbury, the Roy's Car Park, and Magdalen Road, Hadley, both moving to long stay. We've given due consideration in our income modelling for the need to rebate leisure centre users and Roy's customers. We've included necessary costs and resources, including a parking project officer, in order to deliver the changes to charging and progress the parking strategy work in general. We've included the current revenue repayment costs for the parking capital programme and enhanced the future programme in 26-27 to include up to £1 million of investment into parking and sustainable travel, which will be subject to further business case approval. We're here today to answer questions on our proposal, and we feel it's important for ONS to properly scrutinise our work. And for transparency, we have provided the report that we intend to take to Cabinet for a decision on the 8th of April, as opposed to giving you a further briefing note.
Thank you, Mark. Members, there's now an opportunity for you to ask questions. May I remind members that questions must be relevant to the report and must fall in line with the scope of the committee, as we heard from the monitoring officer. Thank you. Who's going to? Councillor Maybury.
Thank you. This is directed at Mark Ems this morning, and good morning to you all. Page 12, 6.22, you provide us with a list of car parks. To my knowledge, because I've lived all my life around this area, that the Sudbury car parks that you have listed here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, it doesn't cover all of the car parks in Sudbury. Could you explain why, please?
Yes, Councillor, the table 6.22 covers the car parks which are charged for and or that we intend to charge as part of this proposal. It does not cover the car parks which are not charged for, and as you rightly point out, there are some car parks in Sudbury which aren't charged, so they've not been included in this list.
Come back to
You may, Councillor Maybury.
You are saying that, but are those car parks not owned by Babergh District Council?
Yes, there are some other car parks owned by Babergh District Council in Sudbury.
So this is a question on process. So how can we actually say that all car parks that are owned by Babergh District Council will be charged for?
I'm sorry, I'm not aware that I am saying that all car parks owned by Babergh District Council will be charged for. This report concerns the car parks which are subject to variation in existing charging or new charging, but not the car parks which aren't charged for.
Right. My next question would be, and this is my ward.
Councillor Maybury, you've had 2 questions. We'll come back to you.
Okay.
We'll give everybody a chance, and I'm very fair, so we'll come back to you for another question. I've got Councillor Wyman first, and then Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Mark, firstly, a really full and comprehensive report, really factual, and I appreciate all the data. It's quite difficult sometimes to absorb the whole mix of it, but nevertheless, it was pretty comprehensive. Just a quick few points of clarification. On point 2.5 on page 6, we refer to different tariff options, and we also talk about our intention not to compete with other neighbouring authorities. Is that process shared with those authorities? So for example, like with Braintree, Mid-Suffolk or Ipswich Borough Council, do they offer the same kind of reciprocal arrangement? I'm
sorry, Councillor. This is from our own desktop research of what other councils charge for, plus Matt, in his capacity as our parking services manager, also attends a regional parking forum where he engages with other officers in that forum. So we have taken on board their current charges. We have not included the councils which are seeking to put their charges up, and some of those councils we know are in the process of looking to put their charges up at the moment. And in the appendices, councillors will find the charging benchmarking work that we've done. We've limited that to travel times or travel distances of 30 miles. We thought that was a sensible distance to be going. It's included a lot of other neighbouring councils, and councillors will be able to see that we compare very favourably.
Thanks, Mark. Chairman, may I take one more question, please? On the, this is a question I've had for a while actually, and it's been asked before, and I'm still not entirely sure about it. It relates to the maths. The general NNDR payable, I think that's under Appendix B, and when I'm talking about the general business rates, is shown at 297,428. Is this? Can you confirm this is the absolute net cost of rates to the district? Because I saw another reference in assumptions shown that figure is around about 1.13% or £8,000 net back. Is that an accurate figure?
I can confirm that the costs that we've included in the report are accurate, and that we've taken advice from the manager of the business rate service to explain to us the amount of the retained business rates, and they've been included. That figure is just less than 8,000 that is retained by the council.
Thank you. Catherine Grandin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this stage, I'll refer to the points that my colleagues have just brought up, but I'll be wanting to talk about process and other things as well later, if I may. So, Councillor Maybury referred to the table on page 12, and that has specific numbers, as we can see. From a Hadley point of view, which is where I know my detail as a Hadley member, I don't think it will work having, could lead to confusion, having a greater number of long stay. We've got 152 long stay spaces in Magdalen Road and 67 short stay. And there's an error when it refers to Maiden Way, because those places are now all electric. So I don't think they should be included in the short stay section, because people, if they're going to be charging their electric cars, all the spaces are now EV. So people are likely, I would have thought, to be charging their car longer than the short stay period. So we've only got 67 short stay places and 152 long stay spaces. I don't think that will work.
Councillor Grandin, are you going to ask a question?
Yes, so are these up for review and discussion, or are these as it's going to be? That's my first question with regard to that, please.
Well, thanks, Councillor, for that question. Yeah, we don't. They're not up for review or discussion, would be our view, unless somebody points out a reason why they clearly should be. There's 6 spaces in Maiden Way. That is technically correct. It's a short stay car park, although it's EV and blue badge holders in that car park. The 152 spaces long stay in Magdalen Road, as Councillor will be aware, that car park is currently split between long stay and short stay. Blue badge spaces at the back of the car park and the front of the car park, confusing signage, etc. By moving that car park to all long stay spaces, then the residents of Hadley will appreciate a car park with the same amount of spaces but with a lower tariff that we're proposing, then is Councillor proposing that should be a short stay car park with a higher tariff?
No, sorry. What I'm saying is I don't think people will be staying for such a long period because most people, you know, don't spend that length of time from our measurements.
Yes, but I think the point is that you can still stay there for a shorter amount of time at a lower tariff as well, so that it's not going to be restrictive from a time point of view. It won't cause a problem. There needs to be some capacity for long stay in Hadley as well.
And so while we're talking about long and short stay, I don't think it's going to work efficiently in Hadley if we don't have a free period, because a large number of people who use the car parks use it for school drop-off and pick-up, and those people might only be there for 20 minutes or so, I'm guessing. They use the Magdalen Road car park at the two ends of the day because all the schools that have school buses collect the children from that point. So the parents congregate in that car park, and we don't want them congregating on the road.
Catherine, Councillor Grandon, have you got a question?
Yes, I have.
Because you've got plenty of time to
park,
debate.
That you're calling the High Street car park, the pupils, we're trying to prevent, we're having problems, and we're using the police at the moment to police Clopton Gardens and Station Road because of all the problems currently with parents picking up and dropping off, but a large number of them also do use currently the High Street car park for this purpose, which we would want to encourage. And they have said to us when we did our surveys, they're not going to use it if they have to pay. So without a free period, we're going to have problems just with these groups, let alone all the other problems. Can this be revised, please?
Well, yeah, so from a question point of view there, really, what I'm taking out of that is the councillor believes there'll be short stay issues on school pickup times in Hadley.
In particular?
Because of a lack, well,
but
yeah, Hadley's...
There'll be other problems as well, but yes.
With respect, Hadley's the same as every other village and town that has a school in it. There are issues with school pickup times and drop-off times across the county and indeed across the country. So we do have that issue that's existing already. The enforcement will help with that effectively. So enforcement, with the changes in tariffs, if they're accepted, that should help to improve on-street enforcement, and that on-street enforcement should help at those times. I don't actually agree that everyone will just park on roads. I do think people are law-abiding, and for a small, modest charge, that they would pay that charge.
We have that
and
problem.
sorry, if I could just, and why we've not considered a free period, we don't consider a free period viable in general. It would result, obviously, in a loss of income, which would make it incompatible with delivering our parking strategy and sustainable travel plans as well. 98% of the transactions are over the first 3-hour period, so it would be a significant drop in income. I've mentioned that free parking periods make the enforcement more challenging, and obviously free parking when it's not connected to school drop-off time and when it's connected to visits encourages a shorter dwell time in the places where people are visiting as well. So yeah, we've considered that, but I think we have a difference in opinion.
But we have chaos already to the extent that we're having to bring in the police, and that's with a number of parents using the car parks. And so we've got enforcement involved already because of the problems. They've already said to us, we're not going to pay.
Councillor Grandon.
So if I could just respond to that.
Yes.
Mark, can I just interrupt? I think Councillor Busby wants to respond to that. Is that okay? Yeah. Councillor Busby.
Yeah, I mean, we have some sympathy with this. We've had, for instance, received an email last night from Laura Knights about also healthcare workers that are having to pop in, and the same issue about people dropping off kids at one school and using the car park. Look, this was the reason for the consultation. We expected these things to come out of our consultation with the towns. All we heard was, oh, we want to keep free car parking. We didn't really hear all of these issues. Now, there are simple solutions to some of these, which could be that instead of starting the car parking tariff at 8 o'clock, we start it at 9 o'clock. And instead of finishing at 5, we finish at 3:30. I mean, there are solutions, but we need to understand what some of the problems are, and then we can deal with them. And that was the purpose of the consultation. If these things didn't come out then, I'm afraid that is really down to the town councils.
Okay. That's for debate. Have you got a question? Another question, Kathleen? Sorry.
I have been hoping to talk about, but shall I talk about consultation?
If you've got a Councillor Grandin, if you've got a question, go with the question. But you will have a lot of time afterwards to debate all your concerns. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So one question, then I must move on to other members of the committee.
So, Hadley Town Council believe that the consultation was not carried out correctly. They have written to me saying that due to the wording of the consultation, it implies that a group consultation, a collective consultation from the town councils was requested. And I have the wording here in front of me, but I don't think I need to quote it. And so, and the other thing is, they don't feel that their submission was taken into consideration because everything was issued like the day after they submitted their documents, and it wasn't quoted in the papers.
Councillor Grandin.
Could you tell me whether their consultation, that their contribution has been taken into consideration in the consultation, because they do not feel that that is the case?
Yes, their contribution has been taken into account. We received a letter from to the Chief Executive on the 28th of March. The consultation closed on the, no, sorry, not the 28th of March, let me just go back. 28th of February, consultation closed on the engagement closed on the 3rd of March, and then the proposal that you're reading today was published on the 8th of March. So yes, we carried out a process with the engagement where we were monitoring the engagement, obviously during the course of the engagement, to see what was coming up and trying to speak to people as we went along effectively as well. But all responses were looked at, and we've included them in the report which was put together by the strategic policy team and is appended to the report today.
Can I just add to that, that we had a meeting with Hadley Town Council. Myself, Mark, went and sat with the town council members for over an hour and listened to them. To be honest, they understood the reasons for us charging, and we listened to what they had to say.
They specifically say the questions they asked in that meeting have not been answered.
Councillor Grandin, we are in receipt of the letter from the council, Hadley, and that went to Mark and the team. So
the questions they asked about the breakdown of figures, they feel have not been answered. they asked questions in that meeting, they have informed me, that they feel still have not been answered.
Councillor Grandin, I'm going to move on to another member of the committee. You've had quite a long time, and I know how strongly you feel about this. I've no problem with that, but you must stick to the questions at the moment. There's plenty of time for debate. Councillor Smith, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to echo my colleague's point that the report is very clear and easy to read and full of facts, so thank you for that. I do have a question about the full cost recovery. On page 10, on paragraph 6.7, says that 2 options have been proposed that would achieve full cost recovery. But in Appendix C, the bottom line, the total subsidy, shows that all options are adrift from full cost recovery. Can you explain, please?
Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor. I think I should change the wording slightly in 6.7. You're absolutely right. Despite either of these proposals coming in would not achieve full cost recovery. It's slightly less than full cost recovery. You're right. So I'll change the text in 6.7 to reflect that.
If these options don't achieve full cost recovery, will it be the intention further down the line to raise the tariffs and achieve full cost recovery?
I can't speak on behalf of Cabinet or in the future what councillors might think about raising car park charging. Typically, you tend to review car park charges and put them in place for at least a couple of years. It's not something you change on a frequent basis. So, from an officer perspective, if these proposals are accepted, putting the charges up again is not on my current radar.
Can I just ask, just a minute, Councillor Smith, can I ask officers to speak up? People can't. Yeah, and Councillor Smith, we can't hear you, and so that, I mean, it's important for the public that are looking in, isn't it? So if we can ask everybody to speak up, that would be very helpful. Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Smith.
Just come back on that.
Yeah,
and if none of the options provide full cost recovery, why isn't it possible to model an option with a free period? You've said you've discounted the free period because it does not provide full cost recovery, but none of them do. Couldn't we see a model with a free period?
Well, effectively, if a free period is not dissimilar to the position you've actually got at the moment, which is a free 3-hour period, we could of course continue to model further options. We're saying that we're moving towards full cost recovery. The council's trying to move towards full cost recovery in all of its fees and charges, but it's also committed to Cabinet also committed to getting us to propose tariffs which are modest and reasonable and fair when compared to other councils. So we've been minded not to increase the tariffs further. Obviously, there's quite a bit of leeway between these options and what other councils are actually charging. We've still set them well below those levels.
I appreciate that, but you say it's similar to what the current situation with a 3-hour free period, but having a half an hour free period or a 1-hour period would be quite different, I feel. Also, I note that the costs in the forecast are a lot greater because of the assumptions with extra employees and so on. So these figures don't reflect the current situation. They don't reflect the situation in the budget. That aside, another question, a financial question. In Appendix C, the projected figure for supplies and services in option A is less than the figure in option B. Could you explain why that is, please? Why?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Smith. So, a very slight increase in the second year's... Oh, so A and B, are you asking, Councillor Smith? Yep, okay, so there's merchant fees associated with the cost of parking. They're both mobile providers. The transaction costs for tapping a contactless card, for putting cash collections. Because option B is a slightly higher tariff, that corresponds to a slightly higher collection fee, slightly.
Thank you, that makes sense.
So, Councillor Maybury, I can come back to you with your questions.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you, Chairman. I'm really sorry, but I could hardly hear what my colleague said or the reply from the officers. So I may be repeating what has already been asked. So there we go. We'll have another go at this. I'm going to start with the first question that I was going to ask about page 12, which is the car parks. Because if officers on behalf of the council are saying they're not going to charge in certain car parks that are owned by Babergh District Council, why have we got every other car park down here as being charged for under page 12? I am the ward member for Lavenham, so I'm going to particularly point those out because the Cock Horse Inn car park, for everyone to know, this is the one that is basically opposite the church. This is used not just by visitors of whoever, it's also used by residents because there is no on-street parking for most of, or the majority of the housing within the core of Lavenham. Plus, it's also used for the village hall and the overflow from the doctor's surgery. Now, could you confirm that the same conditions would apply as in Roy's car park, that the users of the doctor's surgery, I'm going to ignore recycling because the recycling is there as well, and users of the village hall would be having a rebate scheme? Has this been looked into?
I can't actually confirm at this stage that we would be rebating the car park in Lavenham that councillor has raised there. We have included rebating the Roy's car park in Sudbury and the leisure centre car parks in Sudbury and Hadley as well. The leisure centres, they're already pay at the point of use, and we felt that it would be imposing an additional charge where those car parks are there would be unfair. And we can consider incorporating other car parks into the council's parking orders so that we can enforce them using virtual permits as well. And obviously, operators in this area can also choose to enlist their own private parking enforcement. So at this stage, we haven't, but councillor will note in the recommendations that we, if this proposal goes forward, then we expect to continue to have a dialogue and see if we can come to some suitable arrangements.
Yes, thank you. I understand that Lavenham are talking to you. Now, my other question is, and this is where we may cross over, and I'm sorry, it's to do with the finance, because I don't understand why suddenly the costs of car parking has gone up substantially. We've been given a figure, but now, or previously we were given a figure, now it's gone up to, what's it, 880,000 for 24-25, and then over $1 million for 26-27. Can you just explain where these have come from? And is this a process that should have been looked at before? Should these figures have come to all councillors previously? So if you can explain that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. Well, I mean, the reality is that the model, what we've modelled, it includes a full and fair reflection of all the costs to run the parking service from across the council. I've been very clear in previous meetings, the 425,000 figure that's been mentioned might not reflect the full cost of delivering the parking service. That is the cost which is in the council's budget book. It's in its published budget book, and it's two figures that are in that published budget book plus that year's allocation of central overhead charges, and that's where the 425,000, 427,000 figure that was mentioned in previous meetings came about. What we've done here is we've looked at the actual budget costs that we've got, but we've looked across all of the services in the council that actually play a part in delivering car parking and delivering what we're trying to do with sustainable travel as well. So those figures have been reflected in the costs for the full costs at the moment, and then for the modelled costs for the two budgets going forward, we've looked at how those costs change. So we would need to add in some project officer resource to be able to deliver that. Like Jack's previously mentioned, there'll be things like transaction charging. We need to make sure that we include enough repayment cost in there against capital for all of the car parks, their maintenance, etc., and the system changes and everything that's required, really, to be honest. It's just the thing. I think councillors think that car parks cost substantially less to run than what they actually cost.
Yes, Councillor Maybury, can I have another question?
Right, thank you. On page 14, 6.34, and you've prompted me, there is a comment about investing in sustainable travel. Can you officers explain exactly what this is? Because Hadley, Lavenham and Sudbury, and also Pin Mill, which is not really being mentioned, they are all in rural areas. So what is this sustainable travel that you are promoting? What is it? How much is it? Are there figures in here that actually say what it's going to be? What is it going to be, and how much does it cost? Sorry. I've been trying to switch this computer down and it keeps talking to me.
Yeah, effectively under the environment section of the report, we've described a bit more detail about what changing tariffs would mean and what we can do for sustainable travel. We are not sitting here trying to pretend that we can, under this proposal, that we will generate enough funds to solve the sustainable travel and the public travel issues that the council and the county faces. That's not what we're doing here. But we have given a list there under 11.3 of a range of sustainable travel options that we would look to be investing in. Plus also in the modelling for the third year, under both of the options, we've included the repayment on £1 million worth of investment towards the parking strategy and sustainable travel strategy. Now, we haven't defined what either of those two, what the £1 million would exactly be spent on, and some of that will be subject to business case approval, because officers only have so much delegated authority that they can move forward on. But at the moment, we don't have any funds in the system to do this. We can't attract certain external funding because we don't have much funding to provide for and to get that funding in, which is a real shame that the council's missing out potentially on money that it could be bringing in to improve public transport in Babergh, because it can't put enough money towards matching some of that government funding into certain places. So this would help with that, and it would. There's a range of options there. A lot of it is focused on cycling, walking, but also there's some work that we can do there around digital on-demand transport and subsidising that as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of positive ideas there. If you want further details, I'm sure Catherine will be happy to explain.
Thank you. Can I just say, for the record, that Councillor Jameson has had to leave the meeting. He's got a family problem, and we wish him well and his family with whatever he's got to deal with when he's gone from here. So I'm going to ask my questions now, I think, Mark. I think everybody's had a chance to ask a question. I was very interested in the car hopping. I didn't realise people did car park hopping. Sounds quite interesting to me. Do we have any figures of how many people actually do that?
Thank you, Chair. Very difficult to provide figures on that. I was talking with the enforcement teams over the last few weeks, and it's well known that people go from one free car park to another free car park, then back to another free car park, or alternatively they'll stay in the same place and use a virtual ticket and then get a ticket from the machine and then get a virtual ticket to avoid paying the all-day fee. But it's very hard to provide figures on that sort of activity.
So in fact this would control that, wouldn't it?
Yes, that's right.
I've got another question. Looking at the external body ethos that advised us, do we have any costs around that, Mark? Sorry, ethos was the agency that have been a traffic agency, aren't they?
Ethos, sorry to confuse that. Ethos are the consultants that were formerly 20th Century, I think that's the consultants there. They carried out the 2 phases of consultation leading to the parking strategy being approved by Cabinet. So that's the work that was done then. I don't have costs for that work when it was carried out. That would have been a few years ago, but I could find that out.
I'd appreciate that at a later date, actually, Mark. Thank you very much. Welcome. Just a minute. Welcome back, Councillor Jamieson.
Sorry about that.
No. I was happy. I thought you'd gone home, actually.
No, everything's
It's sorted.
Okay, yeah.
Well, welcome back. I'll give you a couple of minutes and then I'll come to you with your question.
Okay.
So I'll go to Councillor Wyman first in the list I've got. Councillor Wyman, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to just drill in, Mark, a little bit more into the information in connection or in relation to cashless payments in terms of the mobile app and our costs for face-to-face or ticket-on-machine ticketing. I was looking at page 26 and line H9132, which was the car park permit season tickets. And Councillor Smith also alluded to the changes in value across the range. What is the actual cost or the differential cost between making an online app purchase and a face-to-face machine ticketing purchase, i.e. credit card against an online purchase? Question 1. Question 2, following on from Councillor McLaren's point, do we have ANPR in all our car parks? And if we don't, will it be our intention to install ANPR facilities in our car parks so that we can deal with differential cost analysis for residents as against, say, visitors, so we can have different levels of long stay and short stay permits, and at the same time we can also probably get a bit more rigid control over the people who may be car park hopping between place to place.
Thank you, Councillor Wyman. I can certainly respond to your financial questions. So in terms of the different methods of making a payment currently or registering parking free for 3 hours, we have a mobile option which actually costs us 10 pence per stay. That's also 10 pence per reminder text as well. So those that are wanting to know you've got an hour left, that also costs 10p to us, Babergh District Council. For contactless payments on the machine itself, that's 9 pence for every transaction currently, regardless of the amount that you're paying. And currently our contract with G4S for cash collections is a fixed amount, which works out roughly at about 10 pence as well per transaction. Now, obviously, that's the current model. With introducing charges, if that's approved, there will be a need to revisit those contracts and what the cost would be for cash collection, and any tariff changes costs as well by the providers.
If I can answer your second question about ANPR. We don't have ANPR in any of our car parks at the moment for purchases. That is an option that is available, but what isn't available to us is ANPR for enforcement. As a local authority, we're not permitted to issue a penalty charge notice by using cameras.
I have to say I find that totally incongruous almost, really, because NCP and all the private car park operators absolutely rely on ANPR, don't they? I mean, it's just incredible. Anyway, sorry, just to follow on point to the transaction part. From memory, East Suffolk Council use Ringo. We use MI Permit. Do we have conversations with our adjoining council neighbours such that we could get more of a complete view of control of the way we operate permits in terms of whether we use Ringo or MI Permit, so that we can perhaps get some economies of scale within the districts?
I'll answer this one, and then I might hand over to Matt. We do have conversations about, Matt does through the parking forum that I mentioned earlier with neighbouring authorities. Yeah, East Suffolk Council recently made some changes. They're looking to move to the national parking platform. They use Ringo. The Ringo transaction charge is 20 pence. They've passed that transaction charge on to their customers. Our transaction charge is 10 pence. We have chose not to pass that transaction charge on to our parking customers. Also in East Suffolk car parks, their app usage is massively higher because because you have to pay by app or pay by card. They're cashless effectively as well. So that's how that's driven up a lot higher in East Suffolk. And the national parking platform is something that we haven't yet looked to move towards, but it's something that we're monitoring with our supplier My Permit, and when the appropriate time comes up in the future around existing contracts with My Permit, then we'd look and see how that parking app and that national platform has developed, and if we feel it's right, bring proposals back to Cabinet on that.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor James, I've got you on the list. Councillor Jamieson, are you able now to ask your question?
Well, I am. Probably, it may well have been asked. So
Okay.
Apologies if this has been asked, because I had to step out as a slight emergency at home, I thought. On page 26, there's a mention of support services, a figure. Looking back on, it was quite a big sum up, and it goes up to about 300,000 full cost. That's not been mentioned on last year's budget or budget book, or the previous year's budget book, on when it comes to car parking charges. So what is support services that are affecting us now that haven't been taken into account in previous years?
I'll just answer that generally, and then I'll let Jack answer that more specifically. But yeah, I'm not sure if you're in the room when I actually explained that there is a difference between the full cost recovery figures that we've looked at, that we've modelled for this report, and the council's budget book published figures as well. And the figures that we were referring to before we'd done this piece of full cost work to look at where all the actual costs are for car parking across the council, they represent a smaller amount, a budget which is effectively directly managed by Matt. But there are other offices that aren't covered by that cost, and other areas of work that can be included as part of this, like sustainable travel as well. So that's all contributing to why this figure is, for the full cost of delivering the service, is actually higher. I don't know if you've got anything you want to add, Jack?
Thank you. Yes, I think just more, just to set the scene a bit better, the budget book is certainly there for the purpose of what the budget manager is responsible for and accountable for, whereas fully costing the service and everything that contributes to it, your public realm, your corporate overhead, that encompasses all of that in the full costing rather than a specific cost centre.
So, okay, I think I get it. So those figures are specifically sort of related to parking, or do they cover other areas within the council?
So the corporate overhead, which is within the budget, that covers an apportionment of your human resources, your financial resources, the depot that the team operate from. So it's including all of those corporate overheads as well as the public realm service.
Okay. And the other question I've got on there, now we budget for employee costs, £40,000. That's about roughly what we've been budgeting for the last couple of years. But you're saying the full cost is twice that? So why the difference? Why such a almost double the cost?
Yeah, I'm happy to share the details of that. We have an element of the environmental services, your climate change team, the current public realm team. They are all working towards the car parking services but aren't included in the budgeted cost centre. We also have an element of the assets team provide us with a lot of support in terms of various works that need to be carried out and surveys. So when you take out those various bits of different teams' time, that is going into the full employee cost, not just a parking services manager and admin.
So would they normally be covered somewhere else in the budget?
Yeah, so this is all a budgeted figure, but it's just not been included in isolation on the cost centre. So this is the budget that's been set for 24-25. These are the elements that make up what is parking services in total.
Right. So if I'm looking in the budget book, I would find those extra charges elsewhere.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Grandon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hadley Doctors Surgery is very concerned about the possibility of charges. They do have their own car park, but Hadley's a large and growing town, and that car park is not large enough. On page 27 of the report, it does say that Lavenham will be given a rebate due to its surgery, but Hadley is not being offered the same rebate system, which seems unfair as Hadley is a much bigger area. At the moment, patients use, when there very often isn't enough space in the Hadley surgery car park, and so they use the car park that's just outside, which is down in our papers as the Toppersfield car park. But obviously, if there are charges, this is going to cause some difficulties. Is there going to be a rebate system for users of the car park using the Hadley surgery, as it says in the report for Lavenham surgery?
Thank you, Councillor, for pointing that out. I think the text on page 27 is incorrect. We haven't agreed a rebate with Lavenham.
Oh, it's in here.
Yes, that's right. Thank you for scrutinising that. That's the purpose of us bringing this report to scrutiny.
Yeah.
The text in there doesn't represent that. The financial modelling that we've put in place hasn't been based on providing those rebates, so we'll correct the text there. Interestingly, the surgery in Hadley hasn't actually been in any direct contact with us at all, so we'd be...
They've been doing it through me. They've been... I had a meeting with them at the start of this, and they had the petition in their surgery because they were so concerned, and I had a meeting with the practice manager who was very worried about this.
Yeah, that's fine. We'd urge them to get in touch with us to discuss practical solutions to that, whether it's them enforcing the car park themselves or whether it's us including it as part of our car parking orders and managing that enforcement. Obviously, a number of the spaces in Hadley surgery are taken up by staff as well, and not all towns and places have the fortune of having direct car parking outside of the surgery for everyone and every member of staff that may need to use it.
Are you saying there is not going to be a rebate system for Lavenham?
I did clarify that at the start. As it currently stands, we will correct that text on page 27, and the figures that were provided in our financial modelling do not include a rebate for Lavenham.
Okay. And the other point I wanted to bring up at this time is there's been a lot of talk about comparing the Babergh car parks with other local car parks. I go a lot to Bury St Edmunds because I have a very nice offering for spending a day there. I always park in the Ram Meadow car park, and those prices aren't quoted there. That's probably the biggest car park in Bury. There's only a 50 pence difference on the price of parking in the Ram Meadow car park for the day compared with parking, for example, in Hadley or any of our Babergh car parks. But you can't compare the offering. You know, if you go to Bury for the day, you've got museums, you've got myriad of restaurants. I mean, so many, I haven't even used them all yet. So many shops, both independent and chains. You've got a big market, and so on. There's a huge offering that I meet my friends who come from other parts of, you know, Cambridgeshire and Stamford.
Councillor
and so on, and that's
Grandin.
where we meet. How can you justify just a 50p difference in charge between going to Bury and coming, for example, to Hadley? As much as I love Hadley, it's the town I represent. But how can that be justified? Just a 50p difference.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head there, really, in that you go to Bury not because of free car parking.
Okay, because it's such a huge offering.
Exactly. You go because there's a huge offering and you don't mind paying the car parking charges to experience that offering. And that's what our towns need to do. It's not about offering something free. They should be making sure that the offering that there is in the town is great enough that people will want to go and see it and experience it. You can make it more attractive. You can put on events. There are lots of things that can be done in a town centre. As for the difference, the Ram car park is quite a long way from the centre of the town. It is, I've walked it. And it's very rarely full. No, not when I've been there, it isn't. But, you know, what would you like us to do? Charge less.
And have free period. A free period.
And how do we cover the cost, the total cost of car parking for the council?
We need to have a free period. It's not going to work without a free period.
Councillor Grandin.
Catherine, I've already explained that it will not give us sufficient funds to cover the cost. And the ground rules that we're working on is that we can't do anything on car parking. We haven't got the funds to do it. You think that the money's just going to materialise out of thin air. It isn't. We have to be realistic.
Thank you. Councillor Grandin, have you got another question?
I will, but I'll...
You'll ask it a bit later on. Councillor Smith is next.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies to my colleagues. I'll try and make myself heard a bit better. I suffer. It's terrible when you can't hear in here. Residential parking, on-street parking. There are already issues in my ward with on-street parking where people, workers in the town, in Sudbury, workers in the town and commuters are using street parking to avoid paying long stay charges, and that causes residents issues. If we do introduce charges, this will get worse, and residents are becoming rightly concerned about it. The parking strategy recommended that feasibility studies were progressed in Sudbury, Hadley, and Hadley, and it also recommended that councils develop a residential parking scheme. In the report on page 8, paragraph 4.7 says we've allowed for resources to carry out resident parking surveys which could lead to the introduction of resident parking zones and or further on-street restrictions to manage this existing problem, subject to available funding and support of schemes by Suffolk County Council. Can I clarify the wording in that paragraph? Is it subject to available funding Babergh funding or other funding and supportive schemes by Suffolk County Council, or is it subject to available funding by Suffolk County Council? Because we all know Suffolk County Council hasn't got a lot of funding at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. To clarify that, the expectation would it be subject to Suffolk County Council supporting the viability of the scheme on street. They control on street and they would need to support that, and they would need to carefully manage the questionnaires and process and how that's carried out. I think it's fair to say that the County Council haven't got the money and would expect Babergh to provide the money. So yeah, unless we're bringing charges, generating funds, which we could decide to put where to put them into schemes to help to solve some of the existing on-street problems, then yes, it would be up to us to provide the funding, I would imagine, unless something materialises from the County Council. Just some points, I suppose, around that as well. The general nuisance parking issue, we are reducing the cost of all-day parking in our proposal, so that's kind of, we felt that would help to support and most people that park are law-abiding and will still, you know, they will do the right thing, park in the right place and pay a sensible, modest charge. Most people will do that. And the nuisance problems are already there. We'll continue to work with the County Council and our enforcement partners in West Suffolk and in Ipswich to manage the problems. And if this goes forward, then one of the consequences will be more enforceable transactions off street, so that we'll be enforcing over the first 3-hour period. We'll actually encourage more on-street enforcement by the civil parking enforcement officers as well in certain locations where we think that will help as well. Chargeable parking is easier to enforce than the free parking, and you know, we're suggesting competitive parking rates. And we'll look to encourage a greater frequency of civil enforcement officer visits, and we might be able to generate funding that can help to improve the amount of visits that we've got in certain locations with increased patrols. And you know, we know their current complaints at the moment. It's an existing problem. We know that problem's a problem in Lavenham and in certain places in Hadley as well. So you know, hopefully the proposal will help, as well as, I know it's feared it won't, but there should be some improvement as well.
Ian, another question, Councillor Smith.
Yeah. And in regard to the recommendation in the parking strategy about a residential parking scheme policy, have we got a residential parking scheme policy?
Sorry, Councillor, is that in our recommendations in the report?
No, in the parking strategy.
Yeah, I can't answer that one. We haven't at the moment, but that would be something that we would be looking to do moving forwards.
Can I just come in there? You'll probably find that every residential scheme is different. There's not one that fits everybody. And what the residents often don't realise is that they have to pay for that scheme because there's an administrative charge for that. Now, as for setting up, we could get funds from the county councillor, who has a locality budget, and they used to have a highways budget as well. And certainly when we set one up in Pinewood, we used the county councillor's funds for doing that, but it is only for setup. Ongoing costs need to be met by the residents. And the residents need to understand that even if they've got a residential permit, there's no guarantee that they will get a car parking space.
Thank you. The residents I've spoken to would be happy to pay a fee if it meant there was a greater chance of them being able to park, but I understand not everybody, there's no guarantee. The county councillor's locality budget is, I can't remember the figure, but I understand it's tens of thousands of pounds to set up residential parking schemes, so I don't think one councillor's locality budget is going to cover all the on-street parking areas that would be required.
I think that's a valid point. Any source of funding can help, but I think the main point is we have existing on-street nuisance parking. This proposal could lead to additional bits of nuisance parking that we don't know exactly where that will be and exactly what will happen there. But this proposal, if accepted, would also lead to additional funding for more parking officer resource and additional funding that could be used to solve some of those issues where that funding isn't in place at the moment. So those issues will not get solved as it currently stands, and they'll only get worse, whereas at least there's an opportunity here to solve the problems as well.
Okay. Committee, I've got 2 more members that have got questions. And I think I'm going to draw the question time to a close if nobody else has got any questions, because we're going to have a break. So, Councillor Maybury, you're the first person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. 2 questions, and this, I'm going to say it's to do with equality. So we're looking at item 10 on page 19. Have officers looked into the accounts of rural poverty, which affects a lot of the area that we're currently talking about? And second, which is, I'm going to put these 2 together, is I couldn't see any particular analysis of what the reduction in fees could possibly be that you're all looking for if people stay away. Because there is a fear that people will stay away from our towns. So what is the analysis of reduction in fees? Do you have a percentage on that? Do you have a figure that you're looking at? Plus, have you looked into the rural poverty issue? Thank you.
We've carried out an equality impact assessment form, which can be seen in a screening of that, which can be seen in Appendix E, and that's been checked by the strategic policy team as well. There are no immediate concerns over protected characteristics from there, so we haven't gone on to the full screening from that point of view. So poverty doesn't form part of that screening, but we don't have concerns over poverty in particular when we're proposing such low tariffs, and they're so much lower than everywhere else as well. So that's not a particular we're concerned about there. The second question, please.
What is your analysis for possible reduction in your proposed fees if people stay away from our towns?
With the income modelling that we've carried out is transaction-based income modelling. We've based it on the transactions that come from machines in the main, because we've got a relatively low uptake of mobile transactions, but they've also been included. We've cleansed those transactions and made sure that any rebates, refunds, etc. have all come out of that. The initial assessment that we've used for drop-off has been 20% on short-stay car parking transactions and 10% on long-stay car parking transactions, plus a number of car parks where we've had to provide rebates. We've included the rebates for those as well. And then we've checked that at a high level by spaces per car park and looked at that compared to another district council as well. So we've kind of checked it in 2 directions in what we're actually looking at, but we've been prudent in our assessments about what the income drop-off would be.
If I may,
yes, Councillor.
Thank you. For example, and this is for debate later as well, Lavenham has a donation basis in their main car park. It's called the Church Street or the Cock Inn, whoever wants to name it, but it's basically opposite the church. Is there any refund going to be given to the parish council for their loss of that income, please?
We haven't modelled giving Lavenham, which is the only parish council where that arrangement exists, any refund. Yes, we're aware that Lavenham have been gaining a donation on the council's car park, and Lavenham have used that to improve the facilities in Lavenham. Not car parking, but other facilities in Lavenham, which we've sort of discussed with the council.
I think it would be good if Lavenham were given commuted sums for that, if the car parking charges go in there. Thank you.
Councillor Jameson, you've got another question.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Okay, just going back to the costs of the car park. Now, you're estimating that the full cost is going up quite drastically to over £1 million in 26-27, which, firstly, it seems going up really drastically. And if with option A and option B, we're estimating to get in, with option A, just under, or just fractionally over the cost, and with option B, about £200,000 more. That's firstly on the income. What are we basing that on? How are we calculating the car park income? I mean, how are you estimating those figures? And if, as residents fear, car parking drops off because people stop visiting the town centres, that income could drop drastically. And what mitigating circumstances have we then got in for this huge estimated expense on car parking if the income drops drastically because, as people fear? So basically, where are you estimating the income coming in from, and what if the income doesn't come in? What are we going to do then?
I think for the first question, I'd refer you to my answer to Councillor Maybury previously, that how the car parking income has been formed based on transactions with a relevant prudent drop-off from those transactions and then checked against another equivalent authority by income per space. So we've actually done that bit. In terms of mitigation, if that income didn't materialise, then firstly, we don't think that's the case. We think that's an unfounded concern. But secondly, we would reduce the costs. There wouldn't be the level of transactional costs if a number of car parking visits weren't there. So that figure would naturally come down anyway. We wouldn't, in year 3, be able to put in the investment in the parking strategy and sustainable travel that we're planning. So the costs in that year on the repayment of the capital, they would come down, and we wouldn't be able to push ahead with our parking strategy plans as we intend to. It is some of these costs are already elsewhere in the council. That's the main reason why the figures have gone up. They're not all directly we've attributed them to the parking service because they're part of the overall full cost recovery, but they're already there. They're not all new costs which are going to be added in. So if that doomsday scenario happened, which we don't have any evidence as to why that would happen from elsewhere around the country, then the costs would be reduced accordingly, and the overall benefit to removing the deficit would be reduced, and the council would have to find further alternative savings against other services and cut those other essential services elsewhere.
Sorry. So if the doomsday scenario happened and footfall fell, like people fear, and income reduced, we would look at perhaps reversing or changing, dropping the prices, or even potentially reversing.
Yes, that would be we would provide updates and provide the information to Cabinet, and I'm sure if the income projections we're putting here if nobody suddenly parked in any of our car parks anywhere at all, and they all went to other different towns and boycotted the three towns concerned completely, then yes, I'm sure our Cabinet will be acting accordingly very swiftly.
Okay, thanks.
We are going to go for a short break now. What I want to advise the committee is we're still in questioning mode because we have got other councillors in the chamber who may wish to ask a question, and I think they've asked to do that. So when we come back, we will finish off the question session and then we'll go into debate. So we've got, it's 10 minutes for a comfort break. I'm giving an opportunity to visiting councillors to ask a question, but the committee actually still have some questions, so we're going to go back to the committee again. So I'll give you an opportunity to get all those questions that you are anxious to ask into the open. So, Councillor Owens, shall I start with you?
Thank you, Mary, for giving me this opportunity. What I was going to ask was, Mark, with the communications, was the district councillors communicated to, as in having a meeting? I'm talking about the Sudbury, the ones that it's affected, the Sudbury, and please, I've been away, so I don't know the answer to this. Sudbury, Lavenham, Hadley, have they been communicated this paper properly? Because I believe that we are representing our people and we should be communicated to.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, well, prior to the paper, obviously, all district councillors were engaged with as part of the formal engagement, and then where the councils in the main 3 towns which have got the paid car parks within, we've had various different meetings with councils that have wanted to engage on us on different occasions there. Some of the councils we've walked around the town and stuff as well. In terms of this paper, that was sent round to all councillors. All councillors have received this paper when it was published for this committee, and the point of bringing it to overview and scrutiny in its final form, barring the recommendations and suggestions of amendments that you'll be looking to make to us, was to be transparent so that all councillors got to see that as early as possible rather than waiting for that and just taking it directly to Cabinet.
Can I have one more?
Councillor.
Thank you. Also, the letter that the Town Council sent you, I haven't heard any of the answers, so I was wondering whether we could read out the letter, what they sent, and then pass the answers so the whole scrutiny can hear.
I'd be happy to. I've got the letter and I've got a set of answers I've prepared. If you, it's up to you if you want to read the letter first, and I'll provide the answers, or I can provide the answers to the letter. I don't mind.
Yeah. Say that again. Yeah. Yeah. Councillor, we're just allowing questions. What about Mark reading out the... Yes, that's fine, Mark, if you want to read out the...
Okay.
That's the Sudbury Town Council letter, isn't it?
That's the Sudbury Town Council letter, yes. So, Sudbury Town Council have written to Scrutiny Committee. Dear Babergh Scrutiny Committee members, Sudbury Town Council is very concerned that the proposed increase in parking charges will cause serious damage to the town's economy. Council do not believe that the report number BOS 2310 has properly covered the full range of possible options, or that public opinion has been taken into account. Main concerns are that the petition against ending the current 3 hours free parking, which gained over 8,000 signatures in a short period of time, was only noted by Babergh District Council and not taken any further. Although this is mentioned in paragraph 1.3 of the report, it is not considered as an important factor, as this represents about 10% of the voters in Babergh. It should not be ignored in a democratic system. So they were the first 2 paragraphs of the letter. My response to that would be the petition's been debated at full council 20th of February. According to the rules of the council's constitution, councillors voted 17-12 in favour of noting the petition. It was and is accepted that there is significant public opinion that when asked a question on whether they would like a charge for car parking, that will not be in favour of this. During the debate, and not raised in the petition question, the missing context of needing to make up £6.7 million of savings over the next 3 years, whilst only having 2.4 million of usable reserves to help fund this gap, was also discussed, and this included what essential services might be stopped to make this saving. Whilst accepting the significant number of signatures and the positive effort made to obtain these signatures, it's not factual to say that this equates to 10% of Babergh voters. If this information was analysed against the electoral roll, the figure might be a little bit less than that. But we do accept there is the signatures that came in, the petition that came in, and what happened, and that's been debated. Back to the letter. In the risk section of the report, there is no analysis of the risk to the town economy of removing the unique benefit of 3 hours free parking, which attracts shoppers who would otherwise visit larger towns such as Ipswich, Bury, Braintree and Colchester. Our response to that would be there's no reliable evidence that varying the existing charging will lead to this change in behaviour towards shopping location. Therefore, we have not considered this to be a significant corporate risk. We have, however, considered the risk that the council may fail to be financially sustainable if it does not consider difficult proposals like this. In Bury St Edmunds charges on average £3 for 2 hours short stay versus the proposed £1.50, and £3 for 3 hours long stay versus the proposed £1.50, both twice as much as our proposal. Braintree charges £1.50 for 1 hour short stay versus the proposed £1, and £2.80 for 3 hours long stay versus the proposed £1.50, 50% and 87% more expensive than our proposal. Colchester charges £2.10 for 1 hour short stay versus the proposed £1, and £3.20 for 2 hours long stay versus the proposed £1. That's 120 and 220% more expensive than our proposal. We've benchmarked locations within a 30-mile drive time in Appendix A, and we've provided competitive and modest tariff proposal. Back to the letter, that the consultation clearly shows that the largest response, 48%, said that they were not in favour of increased charges and that their introduction would be detrimental to the town's high streets, shops and businesses. It is also clear that 55% believe there is a lack of public transport to use as an alternative to a car, and this is unlikely to change for many years. The consultation also appears to give equal weight to the views of a single councillor and to the views of a whole town or a parish council. All 16 members of Sudbury Town Council unanimously voted to support the continuation of 3 hours free parking, but made one response. So our response to that is it's recognised that there is a concern about this proposal and there are challenges, which is why Babergh District Council wanted to engage with key stakeholders to minimise these and find solutions which respond to concerns in each locality. The engagement was not designed to be a yes-no referendum process. An engagement or consultation exercise such as this will not necessarily deliver a representative sample of responses. Whilst we invited responses from all town and parish councils across the district, respondents are ultimately self-selecting. Non-response to such an exercise can indicate a range of reasons, including relevance. However, we cannot necessarily infer any particular reason amongst those that chose not to respond. The survey did not include a question asking respondents to state their level of support or opposition. Instead, it provided open text responses covering the points and issues they wish to raise. As such, the survey does not deliver a figure for those in favour versus those not in favour. The nature of such a survey, where respondents have the flexibility to provide an open text response, means that some parties will submit a very detailed response, making multiple points, while others may choose to submit a briefer response, perhaps covering a single issue. To ensure all points raised were captured, these were coded, they were grouped on a thematic basis for reporting purposes. The percentages indicate the number of respondents to the survey that mentioned each issue, with many responses coded to multiple themes. For example, in response to question 1, comments on the proposal, 48% of question 1 responses received made mention of the introduction of charges being detrimental to the towns, high streets, shops or businesses. In response to question 4, comments on sustainable transport, 55% of the question 4 responses received mentioned that public transport, bus travel is limited and or needs improvement. Although town and parish council clerks were approached to provide a response on behalf of the council as a whole, it is noted that a number of town and parish councillors chose to respond on an individual basis. The report aims to represent the full range of responses and views received. It does not attempt to weight individual responses based on organisation type, size, proximity to the locations of focus or other factors. However, we have had direct access to all the survey responses submitted, and we've been able to review in full the responses received, and in particular to consider the comments received from specific stakeholders, including the town and parish councils aligned to the locations of focus, in preparing our recommendations. Furthermore, it is important to note that the survey does not represent the sole engagement mechanism in relation to this issue. The survey results have been considered alongside on the back of the approved parking strategy, which was informed by 2 phases of district-wide consultation. There have also been numerous other discussions, formal representations and public statements made during recent months. Finally, the quick turnaround in reporting and submission of papers to ONS following survey fieldwork closing on the 3rd of March is recognised. Stakeholders should be reassured that there was a process of rolling analysis and interim reporting during survey fieldwork, alongside the continued review of submissions by the Parking Services team. This enabled all reviews to be fully considered, whilst providing as much time as possible for responses to be submitted. Back to Sudbury's letter. The base budget costings in Appendix B do not provide sufficient detail of the breakdown of operating costs and whether the element of business rates that is retained by the District Council has been taken into account. However, looking at the figure, it would appear that a lower cost alternative with 3 hours free parking could have been costed and included in the report. So our response to this was the head of the Shared Revenues Benefits Partnership has advised us that the net business rates income to the council after factoring in the government's tariff and levy costs is 7950.46. The option of continuing with 3 hours free parking was rejected by Cabinet at the 9th of January meeting, so this has not been modelled. The total subsidy amount adrift from full cost recovery for the current tariff arrangement is calculated as 667096 in 24-25, rising to 792625 in 26-27. This is resulting in a cost pressure to the council of 125,530 over this period. The tariff options proposed still do not fully meet cost recovery for the council, but they do significantly reduce the deficit by over £700,000 per annum, whilst providing further investment to deliver the parking strategy objectives and improve sustainable travel. Any free 1 or 2 hour parking option would significantly lower revenue, move further away from full cost recovery, and not allow the parking strategy and sustainable travel aims to be met. Free parking periods make off-street enforcement more difficult, and this in turn impacts the resources for on-street enforcement. Free periods can decrease the duration of visits made and could have a negative impact. Free periods could encourage multiple short trips, which might be more damaging to the environment and cause journeys that could be avoided if better planned. Back to Sudbury's letter. The figures in Appendix C for future full service cost recovery show significant increases in the cost of running the car parks under the proposal, with expenditure rising from about 572,000 to about 1.024 million in the next 3 years. It is not clear how many extra staff will be required or how many existing staff will have their costs charged to parking in future. As an example, the assumptions on page 27 show a full-time project officer for 2 years and a time contribution for a climate change team officer. Our response to that is the 572,000 referenced expenditure is the 24-25 budget position. The 1.024 million ring-fenced expenditure, referenced expenditure, is the actual 26-27 full cost recovery figure. We have examined the full cost of delivering the service, as it is important to understand this is higher than the council's budget figure for car parking. The council's published budget books are there to illustrate the budgets that different directors and heads of service are responsible for, but they are not fully representative of the full costs of running that service. This figure includes allocations of management support, sustainable travel, assets, public realm costs, associated overhead costs, reasonable maintenance costs, existing capital programme repayment, etc. We are happy to take questions on this during this session and give more explanation of our assumptions and figures used in Appendix C. Full cost option A and full cost option B do have additional delivery costs included. For example, full-time project officer to deliver to progress the delivery of charging and the parking strategy, including supporting reviews. The transactional charges associated with card and mobile payments, new machines where these are not in place. Irrespective of the marginal additional expenditure costs, the overall budget variance benefit of option A is modelled as 725,374 by 26-27, while still not quite achieving full cost recovery of the service. Back to the Sudbury letter. There is no viable alternative for most rural people driving into town and parking. Possible improvements to public transport considered on page 20 are all coulds and ifs. Those who live in the western half of Babergh know that there cannot be any viable alternatives to driving into town. No bus service could ever serve the majority of the rural community. Cycling, whilst very healthy, is not safe on our roads, and most parents would not let their children cycle into Sudbury due to the danger from fast cars and heavy lorries. it is not clear if these proposals would raise sufficient revenue to enable all the investment required in Sudbury to enable safe cycling and walking, as per the LC Whip, within a 5-year timeframe. As a council, we suspect not. Our response to that was all locations have free on-street parking and alternative free off-street parking, so there are alternatives available, but it is accepted that space availability will be more limited than paid off-street parking. The proposal will lead to improved on-street enforcement, which will help the turnover of on-street spaces. We are currently reliant on external grant funding to deliver our sustainable travel plans. We can self-deliver some options ourselves with additional funding included within this proposal. Having some of our own additional funding will improve the chances of assessing certain external funding sources, as they have been proven to be the case with the rollout of EV charging via the government's AUX scheme. We have included in year 3 the repayment costs for £1 million of parking strategy and sustainable travel investment. This proposal would give potential to deliver the environmental improvements that we've listed. We're not saying that we're able to provide fleets of buses or 10 miles of paved and lit cycleway, but we have listed improvements which could be affordable and would make a difference, and we have to start somewhere. Back to the Sudbury letter. It is clear from arguments on page 15 that off-street parking, i.e. the car parks in the towns, is now considered to be a method of generating general income for the district council. Our response to that is we've clearly demonstrated in our proposal that we will not meet full cost recovery, and under the legal implications section 7 of the report, we set out what the limitations are on what any surplus, if there ever was one, could be used for. This proposal is not a method of generating general income for the council. It is a solution to significantly reduce the existing subsidy that is made from other funding streams on car parking. This is a fair response in the context of the overall budget challenges the council faces. To the Sudbury letter. The report gives the impression that it has been written to make the case for higher parking charges without showing the alternative options to retain 3 hours free parking. This must invalidate the consultation process. We ask you to recommend to Cabinet that this report does not justify the introduction of parking charges. There should be a full consultation with the option to retain 3 hours free parking properly costed and considered as an alternative, and if any future consultation should fully consider the impact on residents' parking provision both within and beyond Babergh car parks. There is no need to rush this decision, as the budget does not assume any income from parking charges before April 25. Our response to that is the council's had to use 30%, 3.4 million of its reserves available at the beginning of the 23-24 financial year of 11.2 million to fund the current year's budget overspend and to provide resources to fund unavoidable additional expenditure relating to the accounting of its companies, as well as a financial resilience reserve of 1.4 million. The financial reserve is still not sufficient to fund the forecast 25-26 budget deficit and may be needed in 24-25 depending on the level of savings that are made. Reserves can only be used once. The reset of the earmarked reserves are now mostly committed for the purpose for which they were established. The council does not have the ability to use reserves on this scale to fund its revenue budgets going forward, and there must therefore be looking for more sustainable longer-term options, which include full cost recovery where possible from income generation. So that is, apologies that was a bit long, but that is the letter from Sudbury, which is quite a long letter there, and our responses in detail, which we'll happily send back to the council as well.
Can I just, thank you, Mark. Can I just explain to the rest of the committee, we agreed that if the question came up about this, we got the Sudbury letter on Friday, I think, or didn't we? The Friday before this meeting. So we had a discussion that Mark would answer the queries that were raised, as with the Hadley letter. Mark, did you just, I missed that, did you say that you would actually send perhaps a formal reply to Sudbury Town Council? I'm happy to do that. Is that okay, Councillor Owen?
Yeah, thank you for that. I know that was a bit long, I do apologise, but thank you for that.
Yeah, it was a long answer, wasn't it, really? Councillor Malvisi, do you wish to ask a question?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm surprised that the car park adjacent to Cross Street wasn't included in your analysis. which is a resident car park, but again, we all know that you don't have the right to park anywhere unless it's on your own land, and unless you've bought a ticket or a permit or a season ticket or something. Yeah, it surprises me, so could Mark or somebody explain why?
Thank you, Councillor. So are you referring to Mill Lane car park?
That may be what it's called, but it was instigated at the time that parking was removed from Cross Street.
Yep, that's Mill Lane.
Yeah.
We are implementing a residence permit scheme which goes live on the 15th of April. And residents are actually in the process of purchasing permits as we speak.
I think it would have been useful to put that in, to have given further background. Another maybe question, as District Councillor for the ward of Long Melford and as Chairman of Long Melford Parish Council, if these regulations are implemented, will Long Melford get a rebate for being your park and ride? Which we currently do at the moment, but I'm sure that once parking charges come in, then it might just stretch the situation.
I'm not quite sure how to answer that from an officer perspective, but if Long Melford want to put a formal proposal to us to operate a park and ride, then we'll listen to that.
Are you suggesting that Long Melford pay for the park and ride currently?
Sorry?
Are you suggesting that they currently pay for the park and ride?
They don't pay for it, but for example, on Saturday, 4 people parked their cars in Hall Street and then climbed the bus to go and see Ipswich play. We have other people that come and park for 2 weeks while they go on holiday, because it's cheaper to travel by taxi from wherever they are and park their car at Stansted than take a taxi there and a taxi back. So we have a lot of abusive parkers. And
Thank
we have
you.
limited, very limited space. But we shall see how it goes.
Thank you,
Best way
Councillor
in the world,
Malvey.
any car parking strategy cannot go down to the level of dealing with 2 people that park once every 6 years because they go on a holiday to the Maldives. I mean, we're prepared to listen and come up with solutions, but I mean, this has got to be a more general paper than that.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
No more questions. We'll go back to the committee. Councillor Grandin, you were the first person on my list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the moment, the places like Eat, the charity shop, and the other charity shops as well, base their time that each member works for free around 3 hours free parking. So they do a 3-hour shift. And they said to me when I was in there, they're not going to pay for parking as well. They said they donate their time and their petrol, but they're not going to donate any parking. Is there going to be a way that the charity shops can be given well, not a discount, but a free, so that they can continue to offer their time for free?
That's not included in the proposal. Obviously, the position regarding volunteers that give their time to charity is the same the country over and not unique to Hadley. You know, we've proposed very modest charges, and we hope that wouldn't change volunteer behaviour just on the level of charge proposed.
Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Chair. My question's about the engagement survey. You touched on it earlier when you said you were surprised that the parent drop-off hadn't come up in in the engagement survey, because that's what it was designed to obtain, that sort of information. It says additional local intelligence or recent changes, but it didn't actually say that on the survey. I wasn't aware, certainly, that that was the purpose of the survey, because the questions were things like, what are your views on these proposals? Could that have been clearer?
We think from the level of engagement and response and detail we got back that we did carry out the engagement in such a way that it was beneficial. It wasn't just a yes, no, and we were allowing free text and soliciting as much response and giving some context as well. As part of the engagement, it's been really successful where we've been able to go out and engage with district councillors and town and parish councillors where they've wanted to get engaged and discuss with us in and around the car parks and what was actually going on. That's been really beneficial as well, although not all of the 3 councils have engaged on that basis.
Okay, thanks. And it says in the survey, the feedback will be reflected in proposals to be examined by this committee. You've obviously produced a really comprehensive feedback report, but is the actual feedback from the engagement in the proposals? Because I see a lot of opposition to the proposals in the feedback. What element of the feedback is in the proposals?
Well, I think section 9 of the report sets out the general themes coming through from the consultation. We have listened, for instance, for the issue about affordability of car parking for all-day parking, and for our workers working in our towns and visitors coming from a long way away wanting to park all day, and we've reduced down that tariff. So that's a key area where we've actually made that parking cheaper, below neighbouring comparisons. It would be very easy to propose a higher rate for that, but we thought that was important to reflect some of the themes coming through to support those workers.
Thank you. Councillor Mabry.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 18, this is sort of a question on 9.15. It says 24 of the respondents stated that the current car park provision in Babergh is good, adequate of fine. Does that mean that they like the fines, or is that just grammar that's gone a bit haywire? I've been asked the question, so I'm asking you.
Thank you, Councillor. I suspect it should be a or rather than an of, and we will make that change.
All right, okay, because it does make a difference to the sense of it. If I may, the other question no, I'll have to come back to me. Sorry, I was rather taken up by the grammar. Sorry.
Councillor Jameson, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Just on sustainability objectives. Now, if my calculations are right, and correct me if I'm wrong, we'll be about, by 26-27, we'll be about £600,000 a year better off with the tariff A or B. On page 20, there's a whole load of goals: installation of cycle provision, bike stands, e-charging points, shuttle buses, all brilliant goals that we should be aiming for. But as Councillor Busby said at the start, we've still got a 6.7 million hole that we need to fill by that point. So if we are even £600,000 a year better off, surely that's going to go to fill those holes. Where are we going to get the money for all these sustainable goals if we're filling a black hole with not even, it's only a fraction of the money we're saving is only a fraction of the black hole that we've got.
Well, the funds that we raise from car park income need to be used to cover the costs of that and or related projects. So, projects that we've got listed here. We can't use it to cover the costs of bins or planning or enforcement. it needs to be spent on items like this. So, I mean, it'll be difficult to prove exactly, but the bulk of the funds any spare funds will be used primarily on these kinds of projects.
So the income or money we're saving on car parks is going to be no use for the black hole that you were talking about at the start then?
Sorry, just to address Councillor's point there, the modelling for tariff option A and tariff option B show the bottom line benefit to the council's budgets. For tariff option A, in the first year it's 395,000, rising to 725,000 for 26-27. So let's make the assumption that if an option is approved, that it's the lower tariff option. So by 26-27, there'd be 725,000 better off on the bottom line of the council's budgets. Within that figure, the expenditure in 26-27, there's also £1 million worth of additional capital borrowing included as part of that expenditure. That additional capital borrowing hasn't been defined what projects it would actually be spent on, but there are clearly projects to deliver the parking strategy and to deliver our sustainable travel ambitions that require funding. At the moment, they have no funding, so we can't move forward in any substantial way with our parking strategy or our sustainable travel ambitions. Furthermore, we've been really clear, we are not going to be, even with that sort of level of investment, we're not going to be able to lay on multiple bus services run by the council directly for the future, but we might be able to bring forward funding that enables community transport providers to bid for routes and bid for schemes, and our bit of additional funding we can provide makes the difference and makes some of those additional routes viable, along with a lot of the cycling and walking changes in there that we do think we'll be able to deliver directly from our own budgets.
So could you explain that budget variance? Because we've got an expenditure of, say, 26-27 on option A, for example. We've got an expenditure of 1.3 million, income of 1 million, so we're having to subsidise the car parking by nearly 300,000. Is that right? So how is that a positive £700,000 budget variance? I mean, that's probably me being naive.
No need to apologise, Councillor. It's not straightforward. We've calculated the full cost subsidy to the council, so that's not just it's not just the parking service, parking budget that's in the council's budget book, as we explained earlier. It's all of these costs, and that is modelled in the total expenditure over that period. We've then got the total income modelled in there as well. So the amount that we're adrift of full cost recovery is that 427,000, reducing down to 292,000 under option A in the proposal. The actual budget variance, we are bringing in new income, but not all of the cost in that expenditure is new. A lot of that expenditure cost is existing. It's just not been shown to you under the car parking budget that is published. It's existing other costs that we've justified as part of the full cost recovery, and those costs won't be new costs and won't be increasing. So the new budget that's coming in, the new expenditure, the new income that would come in, will recover that level of up to 725,000 is what we think.
Okay,
we'd be happy to explain that more outside the meeting as well.
But you're rightly, there will not be £327,000 of subsidy towards car parking going forward.
I've got a question from Councillor Grandin, and I'm going to now draw a line under the... Once Councillor Grandin's asked her question, I'm going to draw a line under this questioning session. I think members of the committee have had ample time to ask all the questions and raise all the concerns that they have. Councillor Grandin, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I got the impression from Councillor Busby that car parking fees will be ring-fenced. Is that correct?
Well, yes, largely they'll go to cover the costs of providing car parking, and or if we get any additional income towards transport or green-related projects that we'd like to do that are part of our long-term objective that we can't afford at the moment.
Yes, I mean, that aspect to me seems a bit erroneous because one the cost of providing that for a rural county is massive. We, in our county, rely on cars, unfortunately. It's just the way it is. We're not like London or other kind of big city. So everyone here relies on cars. So this is like another tax, really, isn't it? We have, here it says, a lack of safe cycle paths in the town, and 7% refer to a need for cycle parking facilities. We've got cycle parking facilities in Hadley, and they're hardly used. Because, you know, really, we if you go shopping, you need your car, really. You know, if you're doing a shop. And 14% of respondents stated that they're unlikely to change their habits. So the sustainable travel bit, unfortunately, you know,
Councillor Grandon, your question, please.
Sorry, thank you. So, do you think we will ever get to the stage of being able to provide your sustainable travel goals in this paper? Because to me, it just seems like a fairy tale.
Well, certainly we won't be able to provide all of them. There is no way that we're going to provide a bus service that provides transport for everybody in every village in the whole of Babergh. That isn't going to happen. But if we have some surplus funds, the county council get grants towards improving bus services. If we go down the devolution route, there's going to be something like, I don't know, £50 million to spend on infrastructure. We could put forward a project which maybe provide shopper buses for Hadley and Sudbury, which means that the bus goes just round the local town to pick up and drop people off. Maybe that could be even free. Those are the kind of services I think that we can provide, which will reduce the amount of traffic within the two towns, particularly Sudbury. And the reason that people don't use the bike is because they're frightened of all the traffic and all the fumes. So it's a good thing to do, is to take traffic out of the town centre. But there's one thing that we guarantee, is that none of these things will happen if we don't introduce car parking charges. And just whilst I'm on, look, the petition, it was meaningless. If you ask anybody whether they want something free, they're all going to say yes. What you didn't say is at the cost of what. If you'd said, well, would you like to retain free car parking, but we'll close Bellevue Park, or close the swimming pool,
Councillor
or close the leisure
Busby,
centre.
Councillor Busby, we're trying to be apolitical here.
This has nothing to do with politics.
Well, it is, and it's not actually helping the question. So I'm going to ask you to finish. Thank you very much. Committee, we're ready for debate. And I open the debate. Who's going to open the debate? Councillor Mabry.
To begin, are we restricted to one?
You can
session?
say what you
Okay.
It's not questions.
No,
Debate.
It's debate.
We're happy
but
for.
we're not restricted
No,
to one.
absolutely not. No.
Chance.
As long as we can go
Okay,
home
fine.
shortly.
There are a few things that I would like to say. I think it was very unfortunate that our leader, Dave Busby, has used some of the words that he has today. Very, very unfortunate. And we can all get very upset. We can all get very emotional about lots of subjects. And I think we need sometimes to take a step back and look at this as to what is actually being discussed here, and it is the process. I do remember Dave Busby saying, if you don't use it, you don't pay for it, right, and it's recorded elsewhere. I would like to say, I currently do not have a dog, although I have in the past. I still have to contribute, though, through my taxes, to dog bins. And I actually object to that. So why are we not charging dog owners for the privilege of having their dog for providing a bin? This is what his comment is bringing forward. And there are other issues when we pay our taxes, such as Some people choose to send their child to a private school or a different school and incur charges. But they still have to pay the taxes for those children who attend the local, I'm going to say the local school. We have to look at this, and I think some of the wording has been really, really unfortunate, and we need to learn from this, and we need to say what we actually mean in, I'm going to say, in a kind way. I'm going to comment on the High Sheriff's service yesterday when the speaker was, for the address was actually talking about kindness and love, and sometimes we need to be kinder in the words we choose. So I am remonstrating with our leader over what he has said. I also would like to draw the fact that within the paper we have been talking about disability and physical mobility disability. There are others that have a disability that you cannot see, that you wouldn't know. And I think that we need to be mindful of this too. My own late husband would never ever leave the house without me. It's not that he wasn't capable of working, it was the fact that he would not leave the house without me. So I had to drive him everywhere. He wouldn't go on a bus. And we need to be reminded and mindful of that. I think the biggest problem that we have with this is our rural status. And I don't think that's been addressed enough in any of this process, because it doesn't matter what you say, we have miles to travel sometimes to even go for exercise. If you're not going to walk there, you know, exercise in the gym or something else, or take your children to any sports facility. I also think that we need to be reminded that as much as people talk about the amount of traffic in Sudbury, what about the amount of traffic that we have on the roads that are clogging it up and harming our climate change? Who am I looking at? I'm probably looking at you, Mark, for this. Who this affects our climate change or our process to it. It's the amount of delivery lorries. I can see delivery lorries where I live going several times to one property. Now, if that resident drove once into Sudbury and did all their shopping, that would reduce the climate change. So a lot of this process hasn't even addressed that. And I know you're looking really strange, but we need to look at everything that we have been talking about.
Councillor Maybury,
I'm going to stop. Don't
are
worry.
you? Oh, good.
I just think that there have been a lot of things that have been ignored in this process, which really do need to be drawn out a bit more. And I do think that Dave needs to modify his language with this. It's all very well wanting something, but it's trying to take everyone else behind you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybury. Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. I'm concerned about the whole process that has taken place in this parking fee matter. For example, I would say that the whole thing was predetermined at the outset. We have, for example, Councillor Ward saying, it's going to happen, and it's going to be £1. We can't do it for less, it's going to be £1 from the beginning. And we've all heard him saying this. So I think the whole matter has been predetermined. The fact that there has been so-called engagement, I haven't really, and certainly Hadley Town Council hasn't noticed much notice taken of what the engagement, or the so-called engagement, has said. Have any actions or any decisions, change as as a process of as a result of the engagement process. I don't think so. In our meeting, the full council meeting, I'm concerned because it was not explained to councillors at the outset as to how that aspect of the meeting, the petition part of the meeting, was going to progress and the implications of each aspect of it. So, for example, Councillor Beer said...
Councillor Grandon, I understand what you're saying, but I think what's happened in a previous meeting really...
But I'm trying to question the process.
Okay.
Because I think that the process is part of what ONS should be examining, and I am concerned that it hasn't been correct.
Okay.
So, for example, during the full council meeting, Councillor Beer questioned, why are we doing the questions in this way? And then our monitoring officer said, because it's a petition. So he was content with that answer, but it was then not explained to councillors that if a member got up to say, I want this noted, that was the end of the process. That would then guillotine the meeting. It was not explained to people, and none of us have been involved in a petition in a council meeting before. So I didn't know the process, and I'm sure councillors who have been councillors for less time than myself would be even less sure about what the implications are of someone getting up to say. And so, as I have been informed that some people didn't understand what voting for noting meant. They thought that was just one stage, and that we would then go on to vote further on the petition.
Councillor Grandon,
so can I just without people understanding. So there's been a flaw in the process.
Can I just stop you? I'm here. I'm going to take advice from the monitoring officer. We're here discussing the process as presented to this meeting. What happened in the council chamber is quite separate. It might be part of the process, but that's not why we're here today, to look at the process of how the parking was presented to full council. That's not for us to debate. We're here talking about the paper that's in front of us and the process of engagement. And I'm right, aren't I, Jan, that that's separate to what happened? Can I ask your advice? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the petitions process, as detailed at Council, is very clear in the Constitution how that is actually prescribed, how that will be carried out, and we did follow that process. That is part of the consultation process, and that petition has been noted, but it's also, when it goes to Cabinet, the petition and the number of signatures, and although it was noted, the feeling behind that petition will be taken into account by the Cabinet when they take that decision. The strength of feeling, that's something that they will have to pay due regard to and give their reasons around that. So although the council petition was noted, it's still part of the consultation process and will be paid attention to by Cabinet when it gets to the actual decision-making process. And I understand that you were not happy with the process, but it was detailed clearly at the start of the meeting, and if councillors were not really sure of it at the time, they should have queried it and we could have gone through and explained it further. But there is a series of options, and it does say quite clearly in that it's either one of those options, so the first option that somebody would propose, and some councillors chose to propose and second that straight away. They were quick off the mark. So, unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about that. We have to take it as soon as there's a motion proposed. We have to deal with that motion. At the time, the chair agreed to carry on and allow all of the councillors who still wanted to speak and take part in the debate to carry on. That was her discretion, if you like. But we have to deal with the proposal that comes before us at the time, and councillor, and we had a proposer and a seconder with a motion, which is one of the actions that could be taken on the petition. That came first, and we have to deal with that in that order.
But I don't think
It could be.
people realise the implications of that.
No.
They thought that was
Yeah.
pot one.
And that's possibly a learning curve. We don't have that many petitions that come to council, but it is a learning curve. And councillors need to, if they want to put forward a proposal, is to get in early, is what I would advise.
And what I was just going to say, Councillor Grandin, I just want that separate, because the monitoring officer explained that it was a separate process. We want to just concentrate on what we're looking at today.
And Chair, I'd just like to add, going back on that process, so that was the recommendation put forward at the time, was to note it. We didn't know at that time whether it was going to be agreed or not agreed, and if it hadn't have been agreed, we would then looked and sought for further options. Nobody could foresee the outcome of that proposal at that time until it was voted on.
Okay. Councillor Jameson, you're going to debate the point.
Just a couple of things. Firstly, I understand why this paper's come before us, and that we potentially can't keep going on funding free parking indefinitely, because of it's a luxury. I mean, it's something. When I moved up here, I couldn't believe that you could park for free. I've never parked for free anywhere before, and so it's been a wonderful thing. But I understand that times are getting hard. We will have to move on. But looking at the tariffs, I do think we're missing a trick in not offering a free period like East Suffolk do. As the officers have said, I know this won't give us full cost recovery, but 30 minutes an hour free would alleviate a lot of the fears of our residents. It would, and if we go for full cost recovery, and as the doomsday scenario, people stop visiting the town centres, we're going to have to go back on the charges anyway, as mentioned earlier, and lower the charges. So a free period at the start, say if it's 30 minutes to an hour, would allow people to stop off and get prescriptions, allow the elderly to sit down and get a paper, allow someone to get a sandwich. So it may reduce the fears of residents, it may reduce the fears of our businesses. It would leave us with a bit of a bigger gap, but it might be more sustainable long term rather than going for full cost recovery straight away. So, I mean, when it comes to Cabinet in April, I think it is it? Yeah. I mean, I would ask if that's something they could explore when they come to sit before it. As I say, other councils are doing that at the moment. And the other thing with Cabinet, as Councillor Grandin mentioned previously, it does sound like some of the councillors, Councillor Ward, for example, are already predetermined in their decisions on the parking, and they really need to make it clear that when it comes to Cabinet that they are predisposed and they're not going in there already minds made up. A lot of people have said things that are already looking risky, so and could be do not look transparent to our residents. So I think that needs to make clear that that Cabinet members are not predetermined in their decisions for or against. Okay, thanks.
We are, as we're going along, thinking about additional recommendations. So I think Alicia's typing away, aren't you? So I've got Councillor Wyman next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I share the concerns of all my colleagues in terms of we have racked up some degree of emotion on this, a lot, unnecessarily so, and it comes from all areas. We need to be realistic in terms of A, the evidence. Do we understand the evidence, which we've had lots of time to question this morning, and I think a majority of us do understand the evidence. We had a really full and complete report on the facts of how the district operates in relation to car parking. I had to have a little look at a census paper a couple of days ago, and we have 40,200 cars in the district as of the last census. 11% of people in the district, residents, do not have a car. 11% is a fact. So we need to remember and be mindful of those 11% of people who don't drive, don't have cars, don't go to car parks. We're talking about 1,284 car parking spaces, which is the subject of our conversation this morning. That's 3% of the entire number of vehicles in the district. So it's not a massive issue to some extent. I completely understand why people would be concerned about the cost of introduction, and clearly, hopefully, the work we've done will save ourselves or save the district and save the businesses where they may be impacted by economic downturn. The bottom line, and we need to sort of cast our minds onto our legal obligations to create and deliver a balanced budget. Councillor Busby made a point this morning in relation to the Section 114 issues that could easily arise in a year or 2 years' time, and we will then be partnering NCP or some other private parking operator who will do exactly what they do in Ipswich and charge £7.50 for a full day. So, you know, if nothing else, the process that we're going through is we will retain control of what we have. Let's not lose that for the sake of 20 pence or a pound or whatever it is. If we own a car, we have to be responsible about where we park it. There are other issues associated with car parking, which is the security of our cars. We have assets which are owned by every resident in the community. And they have a right to know that we're looking after their assets and we're actually protecting their rights. The only thing which I take I digress slightly with in relation to the report is, and I think it was really light on the stakes that our residents have in those parks. And I do honestly believe that we should try and make it easier for them to park. We need to use intelligent systems that enable people to park without having to go to the machines and do all the things that we expect them to do. And I would like to make a recommendation in addition to the ones we already have. I've got it written down, so it's not too bad. I'll read it and you can agree with me or not. I would like to say, in addition to the final recommendation, which is, I think, is recommendation 9, the Director of Operations and Car Parking Services continues to consider and create shared value for residents by enhancing the Council's offer for non-contact long-term parking permits using intelligent parking control processes, such that residents are recognised as community stakeholders. I mean, whether we agree or don't agree with that, I think the real significant point in relation to what we talked about is we do need to be responsible. We do need to act sensibly. We can't afford to turn our back on a significant loss of revenue which the car parks will create and will help to support the overall balancing of our budget.
Thank you, Councillor Wyman. As we've got, I accept your recommendation, but I've got, I think, 1 or 2 now that Alicia will have to sort of put together. But I've got Councillor Mabry wants to make another comment.
Yes, if I may, it's in 2 parts. And the first is I would refer our interim monitoring officer to her email on Monday the 19th of February, when the order of council business was not adhered to for this petition. If she looks at that, she will see what I'm talking about, because there was not supposed to be any proposal until debate had ended, and that had not ended. So we'll take that up separately, I'm sure, but it is part of this process. The other comments, I've moved my page now. Oh, that will teach me, won't it? The other comments that I wanted to make when I find it, but I've just moved it. Oh, sorry about this. Right. Yes, there has been a lot from the Cabinet at differing times about the loss of services, and I think that is also very unfortunate and should never have been described as such. Babergh cannot lose statutory services. We are bound by law to provide those. It's always been a bit of a panic, I believe, by this Cabinet that we will lose services. They should never say that, because if they are saying that statutory services are going, then we will be under a section 114, full stop. Also, the Cabinet have been, as my colleague, Councillor Grandon has said, have been predetermined. That should be taken up by the monitoring officer, and they should be removed from any further discussion at the Cabinet. And lastly, I would like to say that within this process, I couldn't actually see anything that pointed towards bringing back more local facilities to individual places, which would mean less traffic. Because I think a lot of this process has been, we don't like traffic. Okay, perhaps we don't all like traffic at differing times. If we need to reduce traffic in the district, which is what really this is alluring to, then we should be looking at bringing back more local services. So each village, and this is up to the Cabinet to start looking at, each village should have a shop. It should have a pub or a good meeting place. It should have a religious building as such. We need to be looking at those sort of things instead of pie in the sky. Oh, we'll do something about sustainable transport. I'm sorry, I don't think in my lifetime I will ever see that. Thank you.
Jan, do you want to respond to that comment that Councillor Maybury made? About the comment you made, Councillor Maybury, was
Predetermination.
The predetermination of the Cabinet, wasn't it?
So, yes. So the Cabinet member who will be bringing the report will obviously be predetermined, because that is obviously, it's their report. They wouldn't be bringing a report where they would be against it. So the lead member, which is Councillor Busby, is always going to have that, and that's perfectly acceptable. That's custom and practice for any Cabinet member bringing a report. They're going to support the report they bring. But I have heard concerns about Councillor Ward, and we'll be taking those outside of the meeting.
And I think Councillor Saw as well.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your query?
It does.
Maybury?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Grandon, I think you're going to be the last one. Oh, sorry, Councillor Smith, I didn't see it.
Some people have had two goes. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, you can have, yeah, no, right. So we'll go with Councillor Grandon first, and then we'll come to you.
Thank you. Yes, my concern is for the businesses that are going to be affected in our towns and villages by this. And a number of them, it will only take a small change for that, they're on the brink already, and a small change may affect their profitability. So this is what I'm concerned about. And we've seen in Banbury, there have been national articles where they blame the parking there for the effective closure of the centre of their town. In Ipswich, we can see the effect that parking, because it's a cyclical thing. You know, the shops close because people don't go because of the parking fees and so on. Ipswich is a terrible place. Now, I go there quite a lot because I know where I can get free parking, but it's not a pleasant place to go anymore. And Haverhill, it's been in the press over the last few days, is about to introduce some free parking because they're concerned about their facilities in their high street not being used. So we heard from Councillor Jameson earlier proposing a free period. I think a free period, and I would say half an hour is too short. I would not propose half an hour. It needs to be at least an hour. Should be something that we recommend as an O&S committee, because at least, and half an hour would be too short for people who are disabled or elderly as well. And in Boots, for example, in Hadley, I don't know about elsewhere, you have to queue for ages for your prescription because it's a small place. So it wouldn't be enough time to collect your prescriptions. So I think to support the viability, hopefully, of our high streets, we need to offer, and also to enable school pick-up and drop-off times to happen without causing... We've got a problem already in Hadley where we're involving the police and our own antisocial behaviour officer because of this situation already, when some of them do park in the car park. Those ones aren't going to park in the car park without free time. They told me so when we were doing our surveys. So we need to offer at least an hour free parking, even if it compromises us. I don't use, nor my family, any of our leisure facilities. So I haven't said, let's close those or let's charge even more for those or whatever. There are always facilities that, as Councillor Mabry said, we all pay for and don't use. So the parking applies too, and it needs to be something that we do subsidise and should subsidise heavily, because empty shops do not bring in business rates. Empty shops do not encourage people to move to our towns and villages. So I think we need to at least offer a minimum of an hour free, and that I would like to put that as a recommendation, if Councillor Jameson would agree to an hour as opposed to half an hour as a minimum, as a recommendation to Cabinet, please.
Well, we'll see when we get to the recommendations.
Yes, certainly.
Councillor
Thank
Grandon.
you.
Councillor Smith, you wanted to make a comment.
Thank you. I'd like to read from the Babergh's parking strategy report, if that's all right, on page 27. It says, although increasing parking charges could be justified in simplest economic terms, the impact of doing so needs to be understood and assessed in the wider context of how the parking strategy fits with wider transport, movement and economic policy objectives for the local area. Measures to increase parking charges should only be undertaken as part of a wider town centre strategy to manage parking resources, deliver environmental and operational improvements to the area, and deliver sustainable travel objectives. That's Babergh's document. We've seen a proposal to increase parking charges, justified in the simplest economic terms, but my concern is that these other concerns have not been taken into account. Don't know how that could be worked into a recommendation apart from to start again from the beginning and give it more time and more thought. I don't suppose that's likely to happen, but I'm not alone in being concerned that this wider view hasn't been taken into account. I know it concerns a lot of people.
Agreed.
Right, I'm going to draw a close to the debate. We said at the outset about the recommendations in the report that will go to Cabinet. We're not discussing and we're not voting. So that means all our recommendations are in addition to that. Now, because that is a bit more complicated than usual, I think it's wise that we give our Democratic Services Officer the time to put it together. So I'm proposing, how much time do you want? We'll go to another 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll listen to the recommendations, and then we'll. Can I just? Are the officers going? Are you staying for the additional recommendation?
I'd like to hear what the additional
Yeah,
recommendations
no.
are. If I'm allowed.
Well, I thought you might be, when I saw you move, I thought, because, I mean, what I want to say is what a comprehensive, I mean, the work of the team has been exceptional, and I want to say thank you for a very comprehensive report. A lot of hard work in there with the team, so thank you. But we'll carry on with the recommendations. So 10 minutes. ready to go. So, committee members, welcome back. I'm going to ask the lead officer to read the recommendations that we feel as a committee ought to be added to the recommendations already in the paper presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendations that the committee have put together are as follows. Recommendation 1, that the Director for Operations and Climate Change takes on board the comments made by the Babergh Review and Scrutiny Committee. Recommendation 2, that officers provide more detailed clarification on the amendments made to the information and proposals set out in the Cabinet report as a result of the consultation process. Recommendation 3, that officers be requested to set out in the report to Cabinet a proposed range of tariffs that include a free parking period of 1 hour and its associated costs. Recommendation 4, that officers further explore with Suffolk County Council the possibility of introducing on-street resident parking permits across the district, that more information on this type of scheme be included in the report to Cabinet, and that officers investigate implementing an appropriate policy. Recommendation 5, that officers review whether a rebate system could be implemented in Hadley, Sudbury and Lavenham in car parks serving doctors' surgeries and medical centres. Recommendation 6, that the Director for Operations continues to consider and create shared value for residents by enhancing the Council's offer for non-contact long-term parking permits using intelligent parking control processes such that residents are recognised as community stakeholders. Recommendation 7, that officers include more information and context about the rural setting of the districts, the current reliance on car use to travel, and the accessible parking provisions needed to adequately meet this need. Recommendation 8, that the monitoring officer be asked to investigate allegations of predetermination raised by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in regard to members of the Cabinet. Recommendation 9, that officers give further consideration to the issues raised concerning school pickups and drop-off, as well as carers and medical staff visiting patients. Recommendation 10, that officers are encouraged to retain the cash and card system for paying parking permits to avoid moving to a cashless system. And finally, recommendation 11, that Cabinet are made aware of the committee's concerns regarding the process followed during the handling of a parking petition that was considered by full council on the 20th of February. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Grandin, and a seconder? Councillor Jameson. Now we're going to have a show of hands for the vote for them all, so that demonstrates to the people watching us that we've had a serious session and we've come up with our recommendations. So can I have a show of hands, please?
Again, just for clarity, that was a vote for the recommendations.
Thank you. Well, committee members, that concludes the business of this meeting at 12:51. Can I thank you all for coming, and thank you for the contributions you've all made. I think it was a very fair discussion, and I think we've achieved what we wanted to achieve. And again, thank the team, Mark and his team and everybody, for a very comprehensive report. The next joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting will be Monday the 22nd of April at 9:30 a.m. Thank you very much.